Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: a long way to go, China warned to expect more real estate pain. China and US vow closer cooperation in fighting America's fentanyl crisis. FBI director to warn that Chinese hackers are preparing to wreak havoc on US critical infrastructure. China ousts top rocket scientist from key political body in widening military purge. A long way to go, China warned to expect more real estate pain. The Sydney Morning Herald. Chinese consumers are losing faith in the country's property market, which has been the backbone of its economy for years. This is causing problems for policymakers who are trying to revive the struggling industry. Property sales and investment in new projects have been declining, and the downturn is accelerating. China Evergrande, one of the country's largest property developers, recently defaulted on payments it owed investors. The company tried to assure investors that its apartments were still a sound investment, but the market continued to decline. The property sector started to stall after Beijing introduced rules aimed at curbing excessive borrowing by developers. Nomura Securities estimates that there are still 20 million units of pre-sold homes waiting to be finished, requiring $450 billion in funding. China has recently eased restrictions on property purchases and is urging banks to lend more to developers, but this has not yet had a positive impact on the market. China and US vow closer cooperation in fighting America's fentanyl crisis. South China Morning Post. China and the US have agreed to increase efforts to combat illicit drugs, including fentanyl, as a way to improve relations between the two countries. The two sides have established a counter-narcotics working group to coordinate law enforcement efforts, disrupt the flow of fentanyl and its precursor chemicals, tackle illicit financing, and improve information sharing. The US has been pressuring China to act on fentanyl, which it sees as a primary source, and froze counter-narcotics cooperation with China last year. The US also removed China's Institute of Forensic Science from a blacklist after the Xi-Biden summit in November. FBI director to warn that Chinese hackers are preparing to wreak havoc on US critical infrastructure. CNN. FBI Director Christopher Wray will warn that Chinese hackers are preparing to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm to the US. He will tell the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party that China's hackers are positioning themselves on American infrastructure to cause damage when they decide to strike. Wray's warning marks his most direct public warning to date about the threat that Chinese hackers pose to critical infrastructure. The head of the National Security Agency and other senior U.S. officials are also set to testify on Chinese cyber activity in front of the panel. China ousts top rocket scientist from key political body in widening military purge. CNN. Wang Xiaojun has been expelled from China's top political advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC, just 1 year after being appointed a member. Wang, who until recently led the China Academy of Launch Vehicle Technology, CALT, is the latest victim of a corruption purge in China's military-industrial complex. In December 2016, 3 aerospace executives, including the chairman of China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, were stripped of their roles in the CPPCC. 2 days later, 9 high-ranking People's Liberation Army officers were ousted from the country's top legislature. Hello, viewers. I'm Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, bringing you the latest news updates. Let's dive into today's stories. First up, China's property market is facing some tough times. Chinese consumers are losing faith in the market, causing problems for policymakers. Property sales and investment in new projects have been declining, and one of the country's largest developers, China Evergrande, recently defaulted on payments. Despite efforts to revive the industry, such as easing restrictions on property purchases and urging banks to lend more, the market continues to decline. It seems there's still a long way to go before the property sector recovers. Moving on, China and the US have found common ground in combating illicit drugs, particularly fentanyl. Both countries have established a counter-narcotics working group to disrupt the flow of fentanyl and improve information sharing. This cooperation is seen as a positive step towards improving bilateral relations. The US has been pressuring China to act on fentanyl, and after the recent Xi-Biden summit, the US removed China's Institute of Forensic Science from a blacklist. It's a small victory in the fight against illicit drugs. In cybersecurity news, FBI Director Christopher Wray is sounding the alarm on Chinese hackers. He will warn that these hackers are preparing to cause real-world harm to US critical infrastructure. This is a serious threat that the US has been tracking closely, and Wray's warning is a clear indication of the seriousness of the situation. It's a reminder that cybersecurity is a global issue that requires constant vigilance. Lastly, China's military-industrial complex is undergoing a widening corruption purge. Wang Xiaojun, the former leader of China Academy of Launch Vehicle Technology, has been expelled from the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. This comes as part of a larger effort to root out corruption within the military ranks. It's a clear message that China is committed to maintaining integrity within its military-industrial complex. In conclusion, China faces challenges in its property market, but the government's efforts to revive it have yet to bear fruit. The cooperation between China and the US in countering illicit drugs is a positive step towards improving relations. The US remains vigilant against the threat of Chinese hackers targeting critical infrastructure. And China's ongoing corruption purge in the military-industrial complex shows its commitment to maintaining integrity. It's an eventful day in the news, and these stories highlight the complex dynamics at play in China. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you make of China's struggling property market? Are you concerned about the threat of Chinese hackers to critical infrastructure? Let's open up the discussion. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.